In the year 753 BCE, along the banks of the Tiber River, a small settlement emerged that would eventually dominate the known world. Rome's founding is shrouded in myth and legend, with tales of twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, raised by a she-wolf, establishing what would become the Eternal City. But beyond the myths lies a story of ambition, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of power that would shape Western civilization for millennia to come. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Lost History. After that, leave a comment and tell us ancient civilization you think was most resilient in history. All right, let's travel back in time and uncover the mystery of Roman. The early Romans were a modest people, farmers and shepherds living in simple huts on 7 hills. They were surrounded by more powerful neighbors, the Etruscans to the north and Greek colonies to the south. Yet within these humble beginnings lay the seeds of greatness. The Romans possessed a unique ability to adapt, learn, and incorporate the best aspects of other cultures into their own. For nearly 250 years, Rome was ruled by kings. The last of these, Tarquinius Superbus, was a tyrant whose overthrow in 509 BCE marked the beginning of the Roman Republic. This new system of governance, with its checks and balances, its senate and consuls, would become a model for democratic institutions thousands of years later. The Republic wasn't a democracy in the modern sense. Power remained concentrated among the patrician class, but it introduced revolutionary concepts of civic duty and collective governance. The early Republic faced constant threats. In 390 BCE, Gallic tribes sacked Rome itself, leaving the city in ruins. But the Romans rebuilt, stronger than before. They developed a military system based on the legion, a flexible fighting force that could adapt to any enemy or terrain. Each citizen was expected to serve, creating an army that was both professional and deeply committed to Rome's survival. As Rome expanded across the Italian peninsula, it employed a brilliant strategy. Rather than simply conquering and enslaving defeated peoples, Rome offered them a path to citizenship. This policy of inclusion created a vast network of allies and eventually citizens, all with a stake in Rome's success. By 264 BCE, Rome controlled all of Italy and looked beyond its shores for the first time. The Punic Wars against Carthage would test Rome like never before. Carthage, a wealthy trading empire based in North Africa, controlled much of the western Mediterranean. The First Punic War, lasting from 264 to 241 BCE, saw Rome become a naval power almost overnight, building a fleet that could challenge Carthaginian dominance at sea. But it was the Second Punic War that nearly destroyed Rome. In 218 BCE, the Carthaginian general Hannibal led an army, complete with war elephants, across the Alps into Italy. For 16 years, Hannibal ravaged the Italian countryside, defeating Roman army after Roman army. At Cannae in 216 BCE, he destroyed the largest army Rome had ever fielded, killing 50,000 men in a single day. Yet Rome refused to surrender. This resilience, this absolute refusal to accept defeat, became a defining characteristic of Roman culture. They raised new armies, adopted new tactics, and eventually carried the war to Africa itself. In 202 BCE, Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal at Zama, and Carthage was broken. The Third Punic War, ending in 146 BCE, saw Carthage utterly destroyed, its fields sown with salt, its people enslaved. With Carthage eliminated, Rome turned east. The wealthy Hellenistic kingdoms that had emerged from Alexander the Great's empire fell one by one. Greece, Macedonia, Syria, and Egypt all became Roman provinces. The Mediterranean had become a Roman lake, Mare Nostrum, our sea, as the Romans called it. But conquest brought its own problems. Vast wealth flowed into Rome, corrupting the old values of simplicity and civic virtue. The small farmers who had formed the backbone of the Roman army were driven from their lands by slave-worked estates. The Senate, once a body dedicated to public service, became increasingly corrupt and self-serving. This crisis stepped powerful generals who commanded the loyalty of their armies more than the state. Marius and Sulla fought the first civil wars, followed by Pompey and Julius Caesar. Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon in 49 BCE marked the point of no return. His victory in the Civil War and subsequent dictatorship ended the Republic in all but name. Caesar's assassination on the Ides of March, 44 BCE, plunged Rome into another round of civil wars. His adopted son Octavian eventually emerged victorious, defeating Mark Antony and Cleopatra at Actium in 31 BCE. Taking the name Augustus, he became Rome's first emperor, though he carefully maintained the fiction that the Republic had been restored. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace that Augustus initiated, would last for 200 years. Under emperors like Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius, the empire reached its greatest extent, stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. 100 million people lived under Roman rule, connected by 250,000 miles of roads, protected by 30 legions, and governed by Roman law. Roman engineering transformed the ancient world. Aqueducts carried fresh water across hundreds of miles. The Colosseum, completed in 80 CE, could seat 50,000 spectators. The Pantheon's dome, built under Hadrian, remained the world's largest for over 1,000 years. Roman concrete, lost after the fall of the empire, wouldn't be matched until modern times. Roman law established principles that still underpin legal systems today. The concept of innocent until proven guilty, the right to legal representation, and the idea that law should apply equally to all citizens. These were Roman innovations. The 12 Tables, Rome's first written laws, established the principle that law should be public and knowable. Latin, the language of Rome, became the lingua franca of the Western world. It evolved into the Romance languages: Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Romanian. Scientific nomenclature, legal terminology, and medical vocabulary still rely heavily on Latin. The Roman alphabet, adapted from the Greeks, is now used by billions of people worldwide. Roman culture absorbed and transmitted the best of Greek philosophy, art, and science. Virgil's Aeneid rivaled Homer's epics. Roman historians like Livy and Tacitus established standards for historical writing. Seneca's Stoic philosophy influenced thinkers for centuries. Roman portrait sculpture achieved a realism that wouldn't be matched until the Renaissance, but by the 3rd century CE, cracks were appearing in the empire's foundation. The army, once composed of citizen soldiers, increasingly relied on foreign mercenaries. The economy, based on conquest and slavery, stagnated as expansion ceased. Plague devastated the population. Germanic tribes pressed against the northern borders. The crisis of the 3rd century saw 50 emperors in 50 years, most dying violent deaths. The empire nearly collapsed until Diocletian restored order, by dividing it into eastern and western halves. Constantine's conversion to Christianity in 312 CE fundamentally transformed both the empire and the religion, making Christianity the dominant force in European culture for the next 1,000 years. The movement of the capital to Constantinople in 330 CE shifted the empire's center of gravity eastward. The Western Empire, increasingly poor and militarily weak, relied on barbarian foederati, allied tribes, for defense. These allies gradually took control of western provinces. Visigoths in Spain, Franks in Gaul, Angles and Saxons in Britain. In 410 CE, Visigothic King Alaric sacked Rome itself, the first time the city had fallen to foreign invaders in 800 years. The psychological shock reverberated throughout the empire. St. Augustine wrote The City of God, partly in response, arguing that the earthly city was transient, but the heavenly city eternal. The Huns under Attila ravaged both halves of the empire in the 440s and 450s. Though Attila never took Rome, his campaigns accelerated the movement of Germanic peoples into Roman territories. The Vandals, who had crossed from Spain to North Africa, took Carthage and created a powerful naval kingdom that disrupted Mediterranean trade. The final act came almost as an anticlimax. In 476 CE, Odoacer, a Germanic chieftain, deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustus, a boy whose name ironically combined those of Rome's founder and first emperor. Odoacer sent the imperial regalia to Constantinople, declaring that one emperor was sufficient. Yet the Eastern Roman Empire, which we call the Byzantine Empire, continued for another 1,000 years. Under Justinian in the 6th century, it reconquered much of the Western Mediterranean. Byzantine scholars preserved Greek and Roman texts that would otherwise have been lost. When Constantinople finally fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, Byzantine refugees brought this knowledge to Western Europe, helping to spark the Renaissance. The legacy of Rome permeates modern life in ways we rarely consider. The very idea of republican government, with its separation of powers and representative democracy, derives from Roman models. The American founding fathers consciously modeled their new republic on Roman precedents, adopting Roman symbols like the eagle and fasces, Roman architectural styles for government buildings, and even Roman pseudonyms in their political writings. Our calendar is Roman. July named for Julius Caesar, August for Augustus. The months September through December literally mean 7th through 10th, reflecting their position in the old Roman calendar. The concept of the weekend, with its day of rest, combines Roman market days with Judeo-Christian Sabbath traditions. Modern military organization still reflects Roman innovations. The emphasis on discipline, chain of command, and unit cohesion all derive from the Roman legion. Military engineering, from fortifications to siege warfare, built on Roman foundations. Even military decorations and the concept of veteran benefits trace back to Roman practices. The Roman Catholic Church preserved not just Roman administrative structures, but also Roman titles. The Pope's title, Pontifex Maximus, was originally held by Roman emperors. Cardinals derive from the Roman cardo, diocese from dioecesis, and the hierarchical structure of the Church mirrors Roman imperial administration. Urban planning concepts pioneered by Romans, the grid system, public spaces, sewage systems, and aqueducts, became the standard for city development. The Roman Forum inspired public squares from the Spanish Plaza to the New England Town Common. Roman baths evolved into public health facilities and social centers. International commerce operates on principles established by Roman merchants. Contracts, corporations, commercial law, and banking practices all have Roman roots. The concept of legal personality for organizations, allowing businesses to exist independently of their owners, was a Roman innovation that made modern capitalism possible. Education in the Western world long followed the Roman model of the trivium and quadrivium. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric formed the basic curriculum, while arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy constituted advanced studies. This liberal arts tradition shaped Western education until the modern era. The concept of universal citizenship, revolutionary in its time, laid groundwork for modern ideas about human rights and equality before the law. When the Apostle Paul claimed his rights as a Roman citizen, he invoked protections that prefigured modern civil liberties. The Constitutio Antoniniana of 212 CE, granting citizenship to all free inhabitants of the empire, was an unprecedented act of inclusion. Roman philosophy, particularly Stoicism, as practiced by Marcus Aurelius, continues to influence modern thought. The emphasis on duty, self-control, and acceptance of fate resonates with contemporary self-help movements. Cognitive behavioral therapy draws heavily on Stoic principles developed 2,000 years ago. The fall of Rome has been analyzed endlessly, with each generation finding new lessons. Edward Gibbon blamed Christianity and moral decay. Modern historians point to economic factors, military pressures, plague, climate change, and administrative complexity. The truth likely combines all these factors and more. Some argue Rome never truly fell, but transformed. The Byzantine Empire continued Roman law and administration. The Holy Roman Empire claimed Roman authority. The Russian czars called themselves Caesar. The Ottoman sultans claimed to be Roman emperors. Even Mussolini's fascists and Hitler's Third Reich invoked Roman imagery and ideals. Perhaps Rome's greatest legacy is the idea of universal civilization, that diverse peoples can unite under common laws and values while maintaining their distinct identities. This vision, however imperfectly realized, inspired subsequent attempts at international cooperation from the United Nations to the European Union. The Roman example also serves as a warning. The concentration of wealth, the corruption of democratic institutions, the overextension of military power, the neglect of infrastructure, the loss of civic virtue. These patterns that contributed to Rome's decline remain relevant today. Every republic that followed has looked anxiously for signs of its own decline, measuring itself against Rome's example. Modern archaeology continues to reveal new aspects of Roman life. Recent discoveries have shown that Roman trade networks extended to India and China, that Roman technology was more advanced than previously thought, and that life in the provinces was often more prosperous than literary sources suggest. DNA analysis has revealed the incredible diversity of Rome's population, with people from Africa, Asia, and Northern Europe living side by side in Roman cities. This cosmopolitan character challenges simplistic narratives about racial and ethnic identity in the ancient world. Environmental studies have shown how Roman industrial activity, particularly mining and smelting, left traces in ice cores and lake sediments across Europe. The Roman economy operated on a scale that wouldn't be matched again until the Industrial Revolution. As we stand at our own crossroads of history, facing challenges of governance, identity, and sustainability, Rome's example remains profoundly relevant, not as a model to slavishly imitate, but as a vast experiment in human organization, whose successes and failures continue to instruct. The story of Rome reminds us that no power, however great, is tremont. That civilizations rise through innovation, discipline, and inclusivity, but can fall through corruption, complacency, and division. That the monuments we build, the laws we establish, and the ideas we propagate can outlive our political institutions by millennia. From its mythical founding to its prolonged transformation, Rome's story is ultimately a human story of ambition and achievement, of power and its corruption, of order and chaos, of the eternal tension between individual desire and collective good. In studying Rome, we study ourselves, for we are all, in some sense, heirs to the Roman legacy. The eagles have long since departed, the legions have marched into history, and the forums stand silent. But in our laws, our languages, our cities, and our dreams of universal human dignity, Rome lives on. SPQR, Senatus Populusque, Romanus, the Senate and people of Rome, may no longer govern from the 7 hills, but their echo resounds wherever people gather to govern themselves, wherever law restrains power, wherever diverse peoples unite in common purpose. This is the enduring legacy of Rome, not an empire of territory, but an empire of ideas that continues to shape our world 2 millennia after the last legion laid down its arms. In understanding Rome's rise and fall, we better understand our own place in the great continuum of human civilization, forever looking back to move forward, forever learning from the past to build the future.